Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes Podcast. We're here with Scott Needham, who is the founder and CEO of SmartScout. How are you?
Good, good.
Thank you for joining. This one will be fun for me because we'll get into it. This is an industry and a company and a field that I don't participate in, but I'm excited to learn how the model works, hear the story of it, and ultimately like how it affects people's lives. So let's get the backstory on SmartScout. Where did the idea come from, or where did this version of its life morph from?
So the industry we're talking about is Amazon e-commerce, and I jumped into it about 10 years ago. I thought I was gonna be the next engineer at Google. Instead, my brother was selling on Amazon, and I was like, okay, like I actually could be like a partner on something. And so we were selling and just doing whatever we could to grow. It turns out it wasn't that hard to grow on Amazon. I think within 4 years we achieved 50 million in revenue as just a third-party seller. That's where we were selling like just um, other brands' products a lot of times, but a lot of it. And some people may be familiar with like the probably the most successful Amazon seller. The largest is just down the street here. That's Pattern, and we were probably very similar to them. I think they got some early wins that helped them like really snowball to what they are today. We were building interesting tech on our own and had our own distractions. And so we actually spun off now three businesses. And of those three, one of them we actually were able to exit. So while BuyBoxer today, like the Amazon selling business that I was building is now we're like shrinking it intentionally. We're just like moving over to, um, other opportunities. SmartScout's the one that I, jumped into. And it's great. Like it's a software business, so it's interesting. But really, I wouldn't have been able to do it without like the years of selling and the pain points that I felt of because Amazon's kind of chaotic. There's millions of products, and so SmartScout's kind of core function is to make sense of that and create order out of all that chaos.
Yeah. And through data and analytics and dashboards and like really cool like business intelligence
hmm
ultimately is how that's done, right?
Yeah, I would say what we do very strongly compared to others is competitor research. So Amazon, you can get your own data and you can start to build your own, dashboards. But we do it and do spend a lot of time in uh, in the data just to like show you, oh, here's what your competition is doing, and here's what this market, is doing. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? And here's the winners and here's the losers. So yeah, that's the space that we've been in and continue to innovate for now 2.5 years.
Cool. So let's say you're at a family barbecue and you've got somebody that's reasonably good at selling on Amazon, and then you've got somebody that's got a little widget doohickey and they want to sell on Amazon, and you're sitting in between both of them and they're just bombarding you with questions. Which one's the better fit for Smart Scout?
Um, okay, this is where it's going to sound like an advertisement, but anyone that touches the Amazon marketplace in any way, any type of way that you're selling, like there's use cases inside Smart Scout. Um, Pattern is one of our like top users. They have people that are on their sales, their business development team. They use Smart Scout because they want to find like brands that they can start pitching to like work with Pattern, and they can get their story really quickly. On the flip side, people that are managing a brand and trying to grow it, we have that's probably maybe they'll probably use our keyword tools where we show you, oh, here's where your competition is spending their money. And so there's a few different parts of that, of your business that like you can use Smart Scout. Now let's go back to the barbecue. You got the fairly experienced or there's like the brand new. And like I said, like they'll use it very differently. The person that's like got a new product will be like, hey, you got this product, but like, do you know how big your market is? Like, what's your opportunity? Like, is this like a $10 million a year or is this $100 million a year? And it's surprisingly not easy just to get that data by yourself because it's kind of hard to create a market out of thin air. Now, people do it, it happens, but um, I wouldn't expect someone just to like, create a new market. Usually you join a market and maybe you improve it and, take, let's say it's a home run success and you take about half of the market. Like that's, um, so like someone that's like starting out, like first they just want to see their market. Now someone that's more experienced and has been selling on Amazon for a while, you know, they, uh, they want to see, have we been winning or losing? Like, is this, are our efforts working?
Yeah.
And we can like give them scores on their brands and their products. And then they may be interested, like, oh, what's an adjacent market where, like, hey, we have this supply chain, we have this brand. Now, Amazon's not just like one marketplace. It's actually like 40,000 sub markets where, like, take a category like, pickleball to like, lemon squeezers. Each of those is kind of its own like competitive, market. And like there's adjacent ones to it where like, it's usually very easy to leverage a brand and to launch in new categories. So that's maybe where the more experienced person will come in and think.
I love it. So when I was younger, Browning and their CMO's been on the podcast as well. There's obviously like the guns and then the camping and outdoor equipment, but there's like golf clubs and arrows and things like that. And this was before the days of like analytics and business intelligence and Amazon. But with what they had at the time, they were like, who else is like our core demographic? And I was 12, 14, 15 years old at the time. But it turns out like it was me, right? Because like I trusted the Browning hunting gear and equipment. And I remember like having the chance to pick out some golf clubs when I was like 12, and there was Browning golf clubs. They don't do those anymore.
Right.
But I was like, oh yeah, obviously we're going to go with Browning. Zero research on that, right? Like they beat Titleist and Callaway. And I'm sure the folks at Browning were just like, yeah, this kind of core group will also go out in these other areas. But you guys can do that
Yeah.
in hours, seconds.
Yeah. This was an example that I talked with someone at Built Bar last week. And, um, when it comes to Amazon, there's a lot of different like strategies. And I mean, some people want to sell directly. Some people want to ignore it altogether. That's actually Nike. Nike like doesn't sell on Amazon. They tried it. Then they just like left it to now like resellers just pick it up. Um, but even a direct to consumer brand like Built Bar, I think that for the first while, like they're like, maybe let's just throw this up and like, the sales that happen, they happen, but we don't make as much money here. Or maybe that was their thinking. There wasn't as much long-term value. And then they started, leaning into it, just cleaning it up. And they're like, oh, this is growing. Oh, wait, people actually subscribe to our products here. And so like we get new customers, uh, you know, very easily. It's not, we don't have to like advertise on Facebook. We don't have to do all this other stuff. So they started growing on Amazon. And before you know it, like they're like, oh, this is actually worth leaning into. So, and as they've done that, they're like, oh, there's more opportunity here. So like Built Bar like has done a really good job, like, in their category. Now, what's an adjacent category? So what are some new products that really make sense with the Built Bar brand? And Amazon's actually a really good place to just experiment. You're like, we can get up and running and see how this works in a matter of like, a month or two versus like, a very complicated, research process that you would otherwise do on yourself.
Yeah.
So, you see a lot of interesting ways to approach this big marketplace.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of the guesswork out, right?
Yeah.
Going back to that family barbecue with the newbie, maybe you're at the family barbecue a year later, and they might actually be able to sound intelligent on, well, our market is this and our buyers are this.
Yeah.
Turns out there's a lot of them in the panhandle of Florida. Here's the reasons why, right? And you'd be like, where did you just come from? but they have like access to it, right? They can
Uh-huh.
see it through your guys' tools,
Yeah.
and they sound like a genius,
Yeah.
or at least
No,
approaching.
no, absolutely. I mean, there's something to be said about um, what is it like? I think 150 to 200 million Americans have a credit card on Amazon, and so like when they want a product, like that is an insane amount. Like that is so many people, and so success on Amazon kind of has this like hockey stick growth, where like once you get like successful, like it gets big fast, and you find these like you find your audience, whether they're in Florida or wherever.
Yeah. And for you guys with Smart Scout, where do you focus on like getting your customers, your clients? What is your ultimate business model? Where do you take your margins
Yeah,
from?
yeah, yeah. So, funny enough, I was just a seller. This is actually the story of SmartScout. I think we kind of skipped over it a bit. I was selling on Amazon, but I was generally a software developer, and I started to just engage with. It's actually a Reddit post. I was like, "Hey, I'm a developer on Amazon. Like, I wanted to let's talk about technical questions," and we just like jumped in and from that thread, like it was kind of crazy some of the responses that would happen. Um, I did mention another service that like we had provided. This is the tool that actually exited, and man, that actually brought in a lot of traffic, and the light bulbs just went off. Oh my goodness, there's so much value. This is a big community of sellers. There's 100,000 that are doing a million or more a year, and so, like, what a valuable audience, just people like targeted on one thing and they want to grow their Amazon businesses. And so the light bulbs went off. And there was even a year that I was like engaging with the community. I started a podcast and he was very active on social media. There was a year I didn't even have like a service that I was offering, nothing that I was like getting paid for. But I just knew there is value in this audience. These are, uh, new entrepreneurs that are growing and they're fairly passionate. And so eventually I wanted to take some of my findings from selling on Amazon and roll it up into just like a software service. And, maybe I wish I did this 10 years ago. Instead of selling, I wish I was like started building out a service from the beginning because, it's incredible business
Hmm.
as um, um, so so yeah, we were scratching an itch that I knew that I had. So actually, Buy Boxer, one of our problems was like, hey, we could go out to these trade shows, and the next supplier can be like the best one, but we didn't know that. It just kind of was like this thing in the back of my mind, like, what is actually our best opportunity? Where should we spend our time? And so I started to create just like a map of every brand on Amazon. There's like a million brands on Amazon, which ones fit the criteria that we want. Kind of just like give you a spreadsheet of like, and you just like filter out like, okay, we want brands that are not too big, not too small. So like this revenue target, this category, this criteria, they don't sell directly themselves. So we know that like these are like our 10 best opportunities. Let's just spend our time right here.
Hmm.
And so like we solved that. And I was like, oh, I could solve this for other people. And so late 2020, we launched on the backs of like having a podcast, having this audience that I spent a year uh, nurturing. And, day one, we had 75 paying users because like they saw like what I saw, like that there's a limited amount of time you can in um, finding opportunities. And so have a tool that just saves all that time, makes it really easy, and kind of we just like have grown from there. So started with 75, and now we have 2,500 users, and it's generally just a subscription business. Uh, I thought it was so valuable at the beginning that I wouldn't let people pay monthly. I was like, no, like annual only. Um, but I think I just started to learn about like what the market wants, who my customers actually were. Sometimes they are brand new. Say they are this like brand new seller at a barbecue. They'll pay for a tool because like they care about like launching right,
Hmm.
but maybe they give up. So there's a lot of new entrepreneurs coming in. We probably have uh, 60 trials a day, people trying out, and a percentage of them stay with us. And and a percentage of them stay with us only for a few months. But either way, every person is kind of a business opportunity. We don't know who's going to succeed in the long run. So we did end up rolling out a monthly. We've raised prices as we've improved the tools, and yeah, just continuously improve the tools. It's not very hard for us to see what our path for growth is.
Yeah. And you guys can kind of see that and like project out internally, like we need some more support here. We need a few more creators and a few more developers. But when a customer comes on and they're doing well, right? But they have questions. What is the support like afterwards? Of like, I can't figure out how to get this thing to work, or am I doing this right? Like, I always am self-conscious with these software tools that have all sorts of bells and whistles. Of like, oh, I didn't even know about that closet full of whistles.
We've got a lot of a lot of those closets. It's definitely a challenge um, uh, in keeping everyone using as much as they find value in.
Yeah,
We keep. I could jump on a call with any customer and show them like, oh, we actually also do this. They probably see us in one lane or another. Um, the best way I think that we have tackled this is generally most of our like data is the word I use is threaded, where like say you started a brand, oh you just like you click and it takes you to the products. Oh, you could also see like, oh, here's like the categories that they're in. So and then maybe you're in the category, then you could be like, oh, look at these other brands. So it very much is just like a weaving experience through like the data, and that's what's worked the best for us in terms of keeping people aware of like what's available. They generally are always seeing it. That hasn't solved the full problem though. So we have probably three people on our customer service team, and our salesmen, like when they sign someone up, it's a longer relationship that they're signing up for just to answer questions here and there.
yeah.
Um, and we'll never get this problem completely right because you know the more users, the more people you have to actually answer this for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's interesting watching it all happen. And along those lines, right? Like, you guys probably have access to some really cool data that's kind of showing like what's on people's minds in America and what they're
Yeah.
feeling and where
Well,
they're going.
just 2 months ago, we finally launched this, keyword history, and now we're seeing every holiday come through. We're like, oh, okay, this is, Mother's Day. Okay, no, actually, it started with Easter. We were looking at data. Okay, then after that was like Mother's Day. Now it was Father's Day. So you see these like trending, things over time, and it's fun to kind of see that stuff. It is fun to play in the data, because fortunately, we're able to use our data, our like we show data on sellers. Well, that's who we actually also sell to. So we kind of like, what's that term? Like feed our own dog food, or
Yeah.
to
Eat your own dog food.
eat your own dog food. Yeah, to like reach out to people.
Yeah. And in general, like when you're having fun looking at things, how long do these little trends last? Is it months, days, weeks of
Like the keyword trends.
yeah.
Um, it's just like usually like 2 or 3 months. Sometimes we found one like, oh, this one clearly like is like a TikTok brand that just like went from 0 to like 1 million. You usually see a few of those going on at any given moment,
Yeah.
and they could stay and be like a new brand, or like they could fade. So you kind of see some of those trends just pop and leave.
Yeah. And you probably see like the demise of certain things that were cool for a year or two. Like you can kind of see that they're forecasting and going in the opposite direction. Like there's a graveyard of millions of those over the course of human history of like people just lose interest.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a very like selling on Amazon. Like, yeah, the revenue is there, but like it's competitive, and you see some categories that like when they really start to mature, um, yeah, they're really hard to break into. I did mention pickleball earlier, and that's like a really interesting one because it's a commodity. Chinese sellers can come in and sell like the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is also a an up and coming brand that everyone wants to be a part of. So there's dozens of people that are like, this is what I want to do. I want to sell pickleball paddles. So it's like turned into a super competitive space. And there's definitely a graveyard of brands that, didn't meet their expectations.
Yeah. And for me, being a weirdo, the fun part is like 10 years from now going to garage sales. You'll be looking at this stuff and be like, oh, they didn't make it. They didn't make it. What were they doing in this field? Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it got frothy there for a second, and only the big dogs achieved what they needed to achieve. Really cool. So the funnest part that you and your team have on a day is
The funnest part. That's a great question. Really, I think what gets us excited is just launching something new. I'm not sure if that's always the best strategy. Like sometimes you probably spend time improving stuff, but like creating new stuff is super exciting. About 6 weeks ago, we had a crazy idea to launch a conference. And we knew there was an audience that was underserved in the Amazon community. And we launched it. And like, while it brings in less revenue than SmartScout, I mean, there was like 2 weeks. That's all I could talk about and think about
mm-hmm.
because it was just like so exciting to like just connect and to give what people wanted, like just see the buzz that it created in the community. Like, we sold 300 tickets to a conference in New York City. Like that is just like fun
Yeah.
to kind of like to meet that. And it's going on at the end of August, and so we're going to be super excited to see every step of that way. Like it's going to be a few crazy months building up to that as like people are like flying out to like show up. See, like that's kind of the stuff that's really fun is actually we sell a lot of trade shows ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where like our salesmen actually get our product for the first time because they speak to people that are users or the people that like need what we have, and like immediately the valuable is just like visible. You give people those aha moments that like we can simplify their life a little bit. And so like for us, like the in-person stuff, just like things can come alive. So
Yeah.
we while we're just like an internet software startup, like it is the in-person stuff that makes it come alive both for like our customers and for us.
Yeah, I love it. That'll probably never go away, and if it does, then we'll know like the robots are here, and
I know, right?
we'll just sit at home, I guess.
No, I put money on that stuff staying around.
Yeah, it is a nice part of business, and it really does like get your wheels churning a little bit of like, man, I've been talking about it wrong for 5 years now. If I
mean,
just tweaked
right.
it.
There's a reason the Silicon Slope Summit keeps happening every year because like people actually still want that in person. Like there's something just so rewarding about connecting with people, and jamming ideas. I actually think a lot of our new products come from those conversations in person.
Yeah.
I know that because the one that I just talked about, like this keyword trends. Well, in March, I was at a show. Someone showed me something that's like, that's cool. I'm going to build this.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's quick, efficient, and
Yeah.
you don't have to overthink it. You just have a fun conversation and see what happens. Well, thank you so much, Scott. Congrats to you and your team for what you guys have built. Like, sounds and looks like you guys are having fun, and what a unique time for like folks to have access to like all these tools and a lot less guessing and scratching of the head. So, congrats to you and your team. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.